I'm Julie Deloiseau from Nordonia Hills.News, and I'm sitting with John Young. We're in his kitchen, and we want to talk about John was arrested in 2012. Was it June 12th? For aggravated robbery. Tell us how you got to that point.
Well, the point of getting arrested, it's a pretty long story, but it was drug related. Um, and I remember, it didn't start out as bad to the point when I got arrested.
Right.
Back, it's like the summer of between middle school and high school. I think it was like the first time I started smoking pot. And, it was cool. A couple of my friends, I was already in with the wrong crowd. I was already in trouble. So it only went on to say that we'd do the things that we did. So that's where it started, and it wasn't a lot. Started smoking cigarettes a lot, smoke weed here and there. But like for me, it was kind of one of those things like I found a place, with this crowd that, made me feel different. Because like for some reason I was just never content with anything.
Right.
Like I was just needed something else to make me feel different. I was never comfortable with my feelings. I was never comfortable with who I was. Never knew what I wanted. Didn't care for responsibility. Never wanted it. So the people that I hung with and the things that I did, kind of fit right into that.
Yeah, you kind of felt like you fit in with a crowd finally.
Yeah, it wasn't, and I was cool, because I hung out with them, because that was the majority at the time. The majority of people that I knew were troublemakers, whatever you want to call them, hoodlums. But that was like the majority of the people that I knew. So when I joined that crowd, that was a big crowd, and it felt good. People wanted to hang out. What I soon found out though was that there was something wrong with me, and I didn't necessarily know it at the time. But I wasn't doing it to have fun at some point. It was something that made me feel different. Everybody else just wanted to get high and drink to party and whatnot, and that was the goal. But over time, because I started drinking not too long after that, my dad owned a bar, so I'd go there and help him, and I'd steal alcohol and I'd take it from the house, and so I started drinking, and then everything kind of progressed. I always needed more, something different. So that of course led to taking pills.
What type of pills?
Whatever I could find, Vicodin, Percocet, Xanax. Xanax was a big one. And, a big thing for a while was drinking. I remember when I was about 15, I was drinking quite a lot. By the time that I could drive, I was drinking by myself, full bottles of liquor, and that was that was the first progressive step. It went from hanging out with everybody smoking weed,
Right.
and then a year or two went by and I'm in the basement, drinking a bottle myself, just depressed and angry, and I still went out and I partied. And anybody that knows me can tell you, like, I was always that guy that took things to the next level. A couple drinks wasn't enough.
Right.
And I soon, of course, found the other drugs, cocaine.
Wow.
And that was the big thing for me. And like all my friends, I'd always try to push it, like, hey guys,
Now,
check
is this
this
when
out.
you're at this point you're in high school?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, everything like really progressed when I started being able to drive. Like as soon as I got my license, it just didn't stop. Because now I was free to go out
Independent.
and find things that I couldn't find, being driven around by other people. So I actually got introduced to a lot of that stuff at one of my jobs in high school. I met a guy, and he started introducing me to all that stuff. And so I was always trying to get everybody else to like get to my level because I wanted to have fun. I wanted everybody to be where I was, doing what I was doing. I wanted to be cool, and I was. Everybody loved hanging out with me because I was so just gun ho to do anything and everything. There wasn't anything that I wouldn't do, and of course the people that I hung out with loved it.
Well, and they probably thought you were happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if they really cared.
Well, that's true. But I'm just saying, if someone was to observe you then, they probably would have thought, oh, he's happy, he's having fun.
Yeah, there was very few people who knew, because I struggled with depression almost my whole life. 4th grade is the earliest that I can remember dealing with depression and anxiety. And, there weren't a lot of people that I divulged that information to.
Right.
Not a lot of people saw me at my dark moments, at least not yet. At this point, it was still a mask. I was still wearing that mask, and I was playing that role really well.
Right.
So nobody knew. My family didn't know. A lot of my friends didn't know. I'd have my moments where I'd get like really drunk, and I'd make those.
Now we're not talking 4th grade now, right?
No. Yeah.
Well, that's where you were.
Right. No. Back in high school.
Yes. Yes.
Where I'd get really drunk and I'd have like a depressive breakdown, and I'd call somebody crying and just that anger again.
Right.
Because there was just a lot of stuff inside that I didn't know how to deal with, and it all came out when I started drinking. And I never knew what it was, but for some reason I still did it. All these times I've had these breakdowns drinking, and the next day I'd do it again.
Right.
It just didn't make sense. But some part of it, I guess it did make sense because I kept doing it. I can't say there weren't good times. I can't say I didn't have fun a lot of the time. But there were pretty bad times, and eventually, again, I got introduced to cocaine, and that was a big thing for me for a while. I remember taking it with me to high school, and I'd be so out in the open about it. I'd be sitting in the back of the classroom snorting cocaine off my desk, or crushing up pills in art class and putting them underneath whatever I'm drawing, and every time the teacher turns around, snorting lines of pills and
Wow.
And so and then the people around me were like, that's cool, and some people were like, just avoided me at all costs, but I wanted the attention.
Right.
Got it. So yeah, I was really, and that's not, I don't know, it's snorting cocaine in the middle of class. I can get caught anytime. And at one point, I actually did get suspended during midterms because I got caught. I didn't get caught smoking pot, but I came into school smelling like it.
Oh, right.
Because we took that break.
Right.
Midterms, and I came back, and the vice principal at the time stopped me because I was the only person in the hallway that he walked past, and so I got suspended for that. But there was no problem at the time in my head.
Sure.
No consequences. The consequences didn't matter. I didn't care. I wasn't a responsible adult yet. None of that stuff mattered. I wasn't accountable for anything. I did what I wanted when I wanted, and nothing that negatively happened sparked any kind of thought in my head that this wasn't good, because I got the desired effect.
So where would you come up with the money for cocaine in high school?
Well,
at that point, were you stealing?
It led to it. I had a job. I almost always had a job, and that got me so far. I was selling drugs here and there periodically, not a lot, but enough to kind of
support your
make
habit.
a little bit off of it. And then of course it did end up leading to I stole from my parents a lot to support my habit. I'd steal from work a little bit. I'd do what I had to kind of make up for it. But on top of that, not only just doing the cocaine and drinking, I was a binge user of whatever else I could find. So I'd binge use ecstasy. I'd binge use Xanax. If I came up on a quantity of something, I wanted it.
Wow.
And I'd use it for however long it was there, and then I'd move on to something else. I was always mixing things eventually. Xanax and alcohol, ecstasy and alcohol, cocaine and whatever. And it was, again, waking up feeling horrible. That was then, okay, I'm just going to keep doing it anyways. That didn't stop me at all. I got caught stealing from my parents to support my coke habit. Didn't do anything in my mind. I went to an IOP program when I was 17.
What's IOP?
Intensive outpatient. It's like rehabilitation.
Oh, like rehab, okay.
Yeah, but it's outpatient, so
Right.
like, I'd go there 3 times a week. And
how old were you at this point?
17.
Okay.
And that was because I got caught stealing and I wanted a way out. I wanted a way to be like, no, I'm sorry. All right, let me do what I can to make you feel better about what I'm
Right.
because I'm gonna quit. That's what I told everybody. And no matter how many times I messed up, no matter how many times I got caught, it was always I'm sorry, and I went right back to what I was doing. I didn't have any kind of remorse for what I was doing. I didn't have any desire to stop. Even when things were really bad. Again, it was just I wanted more and more. And that's like one of those common sayings you hear in NA.
NA is
Narcotics Anonymous.
Right.
Is the disease of more. I always wanted more. I always needed more. And it didn't matter what to me. Eventually, everything led to heroin. And when that started, it wasn't like I was addicted right away. I mean, I loved it, or else I wouldn't have kept doing it. But it was kind of one of those things that I did like once a week, hanging out with my friends, still doing everything else, drinking.
And how old were you when you did the heroin?
When I first tried it, I was probably 17, maybe 18, because it was around the time that I wasn't in the rehab. It was a little after that, so it was probably around 18. It was the first time that I tried it, and I don't even remember actually trying it because I fell out. I didn't like overdose, but I passed out. So I didn't really get anything from it, but for some reason, it made everything go away, so I wanted more of it. And over time, that's what I got. From there, it was still everything else. And what happened over time was all those friends that I had in high school, because now I'm senior, leaving high school, and I think that's like, when I left high school, I had a girlfriend that I was with for the last year or two of high school. And, people started kind of fading away. My friends started fading off, didn't really talk to me anymore. I didn't really talk to them. I wasn't reaching out to anybody.
Right.
Because it wasn't about that attention anymore. I was getting it from the person that was in my life at the time. But now it was about using. It wasn't about having friends and being social and going out and doing things.
Right.
Now it was about getting high and getting drunk.
Right.
And not feeling horrible all the time, because it took it all away. All that stuff that I didn't want to deal with, all that stuff that I didn't want to feel, I didn't know how to. I never let myself develop. I always ran from everything.
Right.
So of course, anytime things did get bad, it just got worse because I'd use more. So it progressed pretty rapidly after high school. Not necessarily the heroin use, but just the addiction period. Everything just multiplied. I drank more, I smoked more, I snorted more, I popped more pills, and I was hanging out with people who were like me.
Right.
And eventually my drug dealer became my best friend. I'd be driving him around so that he'd give me drugs.
Right.
Or I'd be committing crimes for him so he'd give me drugs. And that's kind of like what my life turned into. You know, me and my girlfriend were kind of on the same level with that. Like, we were both addicted. We both had a lot of issues, and we both did what we had to keep getting high.
Where were you living at the time?
I was still at home. I didn't move out until I was about 20. So I was still at home, and my parents still weren't completely aware of how bad it was.
Right.
Because I still had that at home phase.
Sure.
You know, and I isolated myself a lot, and that's kind of what I was talking about, like isolation. Like, I wouldn't come down from upstairs. I'd spend all my time in my bedroom.
Right.
And when I wasn't in my bedroom, I was leaving to go see my drug dealer or find a way to work or
Sure.
to, you know, get money to get high. And that was really the only time they ever saw me for a while. And so they didn't know. You know, I came down, smiled at them, left. Talked a good game. I was great at it. You know, addicts, we manipulate. We're awesome manipulators. It's a horrible skill to pick up because the dishonesty was ridiculous. I lied about everything.
Wow.
I mean,
and you were good at it.
I was great at it, and that's not being prideful about it at
No,
all.
no,
That's just,
no.
I mean, that's what I did. I lied to people. I lied to my girlfriend. I lied to my family. You know, I was doing things. We were together almost 24/7, and I still found a way to do things behind her back. You know, I was using more than she thought I was using, and we
Wow.
were already using a lot. Needless to say, the one guy that I was hanging out with, one of the 2 or 3 friends that I had at the time, he ended up reaching out to find heroin because he's never done it before.
Right.
So I introduced him to it. Well, and this is where things start really picking up. I was already, at this time, I'm already kind of addicted to it. I'm using almost every day, and when I'm not, you know, I'm not feeling too good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not using a lot to where, like, the withdrawals are horrible, but it's not fun. So I'm starting to need it. And so, not very long after that, he starts shooting up. Well, he ends up introducing me to that.
Right.
So, and this is when I'm 19, end up being 19, beginning of my 20s, and so I'm introduced to the needle, and from there, you know, that was all I needed, and that's all I wanted, and it was scary as hell. I hated needles.
Right.
You know, like,
Most
I hate
people do.
needles, and like now you couldn't tell because I have all these tattoos, but you know, I really hate needles. And here I am in my bedroom, sticking a needle in my arm every day. You know, in my hand, in my foot, you know, wherever I can. So, still no consequences, still no major impact on my thought process. Nothing was wrong yet, except for the sickness. But I just used more to get over it. Committing crimes now almost on a regular basis to keep getting high. Selling drugs to get high. Doing anything and everything my drug dealer asked me to do to get high.
Now, these crimes, what type of crimes? Did you, like, break into homes or?
Not really. I would do, like, I mean, I can give an example. Like, one time, somebody owed my drug dealer money, and so I went and vandalized some property of this person.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Driving his drugs around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a mule. You know, naive to what could possibly happen.
Right.
Driving around with a 30-year sentence in my trunk. You know, and not even caring, and all I'm getting is a 20 bag of some dope, you know, like,
Right.
just nonsense stuff, but none of that mattered. None of it mattered, because I just wanted to get high. And so, like, that stuff wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind, like, oh, I can get caught right now. So here I am, shooting up dope, and eventually eventually I start shooting up cocaine with it. I can't really drink because I'm already so messed up that if I do, I'm vomiting, and it's just at that point where my body's not doing so well.
Right.
Not eating. I'm sleeping, and that's only because I'm falling out from the dope all the time. Burn holes and everything from the cigarettes.
Now, at this point, did you move out?
No.
Wow.
And yeah, I was still upstairs. Nobody knew what was going on. What ended up happening when I left, things started getting pretty bad with me and my family. They started kind of seeing a problem.
Right.
And I know, like my siblings, they saw it. They knew what was going on for the most part. Like when I was drinking heavily, my little brother, saw me at a lot of really dark times. Mm-hmm. He was home. And this is stuff that I think about now, like.
Sure.
And I'm like really guilty about, because like when I was drinking, me and my girlfriend used to fight a lot because of my drinking. Mm-hmm. I'd get into rages. And of course the depression didn't help at all. He's seen me screaming. One time he walked in, I had a gun to my head.
Wow, you had a gun?
To my head. I took it from someone.
Wow.
Threatening to shoot myself. And at that point, I'm pretty sure death was a pretty welcome thing. I'm pretty sure I would have taken it. Of course, I never had the guts, as you might say, to actually pull the trigger. But, who knows? I might have been just one drink away. But it was definitely something that I thought. And so that's just an example of something that I've put my family through. My little brother saw that, and that's horrible. Shouldn't have to see any family member, anybody, period, going through stuff like that. And I always, I drink and drive with him in the car.
Right.
I drink and drive with other people in the car. I didn't care who it was. That's what I did. Got high, drove around. Nobody else's life mattered at all. It didn't matter who was affected.
Right.
What happened. Because I was just in my own world, my own reality. They saw me getting high a lot. I used to encourage, my siblings to smoke pot and drink, because that was cool. I wanted to hang out with my brother and sister, and God knows how that damaged them, because the influence.
Right.
And I did that to a lot of people. I influenced others to use a lot. Now I know it was their choice, most of them, anyways.
But you feel guilty about it.
Yeah, just like the guy that I introduced to heroin. He actually died not too long ago, from a heroin overdose.
Wow.
And so, that kind of, it's a little weight, to hold. Like, maybe if I never introduced him to it, he wouldn't be here. But again, I can't think like that, because he would have probably found it somewhere else.
But still in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and the fact that I wasn't there when he finally reached out for help, years later.
Now, wasn't there someone from your graduating class that died of an overdose?
He was actually a good friend of mine in high school. And it's really messed up, because when I knew him in high school, he wouldn't even smoke pot. He was one of, because I still talked to some of the guys that I grew up with, who didn't drink, who didn't smoke, and so he was completely straight when we graduated. And I don't know what happened. The story that I heard was, he started taking pills because he got into an accident, and when those ran out, he turned to heroin and he overdosed and died. And that happens a lot. There's countless people. Like when I was in prison, you'd always hear about the guys that go out and think that they can use again, end up doing it, and now it's not the same, because when I was using heroin, there wasn't this fentanyl thing going on. There was this carfentanil stuff. I didn't have to worry about that.
Right.
It's still 2012. We were shooting heroin. Now you don't know what you're getting.
Right.
And there's these guys they get out and they overdose and they die. And some of them are good people, you know. So that sucks. Unfortunately, that's what it does. And unfortunately, that's what it would have done to me. You know, I was
Right.
at that point. I moved out. I was shooting up every day, you know, every chance that I could. Again, doing everything that I could. Now that was my sole focus. When I moved out, I left because my family started catching on. You know,
You couldn't hide it anymore.
no, and when I left, they went in my room, and in my trash can was just a whole bunch of used needles, you know, everywhere. It was trashed up there, and I was gone. I just left. I didn't give them any warning. Just
Wow.
gone. And then they found that, so it wasn't really a secret anymore. A huge rift got created between us. And
So where did you move to?
well, we eventually moved out to Bedford. We got an apartment out there in Bear Creek. And so we were living there. And things were the same. You know, I wasn't able to pay rent. We were relying on my girlfriend's grandparents to pay the rent for us. Couldn't pay bills. We didn't have internet. Well, we had internet for a while, but we didn't have cable. We didn't have a phone, you know, except for our cell phone. No furniture, you know, just a fridge without barely any food because we weren't eating.
Right.
You know, I wasn't concerned about the food. I was concerned about getting high.
Right.
I wasn't concerned about watching TV. I was concerned about getting high. You know, barely any gas in the car all the time. Eventually, I lost my job. I couldn't work. I was unemployable. You know, not that they caught me using, but the job wasn't enough. Eventually, I actually left my last job to go get clean. That was the intention. I came home for a couple of days because, believe it or not, my family still wanted to help.
Right.
And my girlfriend got into a rehab or a detox. And she was in for like 2 days. And she called me, and I was at home really sick. I snuck some dope back home with me because I was going to wean myself off. That was
Right. That was the plan.
the complete lie that I told myself. So she called me. She said, I'm leaving. I said, all right, go meet up with our drug dealer and bring me some dope. So at that point, I'm at home, supposed to be detoxing,
Right.
and she's coming to visit me, bringing me dope, and I'm outside in the car shooting up, you know, while my parents are here, and then coming back in and saying, oh, no, I'm just feeling better.
Right.
You know, I'm not sick anymore. I'm past that part, you know, lying about the whole thing.
Right.
And I ended up leaving under the pretense that I was clean now and I was better and whatever. When I left, they didn't know that I was leaving. I just got up and left. And
Right.
so they got worried actually because they found something in the room that I was staying in out of a needle. And so they called the cops. The cops kicked down my apartment door and threatened to arrest me. And yeah, so I went with my family. They were trying to get me into a rehab. I didn't go to a rehab. I ended up leaving again, going back to my apartment. And it's back to the same old
routine.
And you know, now it's just all bad. I started to steal again. Well, I was already stealing, but now I'm stealing anything and everything that I can find. We're writing fake checks, stealing money from her family, breaking into their house when her family isn't home, taking anything we could, selling. We sold everything. Everything was gone. We had no TV. We
Right.
had no game system. I sold my drums, my guitar, everything that I cared about at one point in my life was gone. Wearing the same clothes every day because can't even afford to do laundry.
And you didn't care.
No,
Probably.
I didn't
You
care.
probably didn't care about the clothes.
We didn't care at all.
No.
It was nothing. I don't care about wearing the same pants every day as long as I'm getting high. Hygiene took a toll. You know, I was a pretty cleanly person, but you know, even showering wasn't on the priority list. You know,
It's a waste of time.
I'll shower when I get high. You know, yeah, it took me from being out doing what I needed to do.
Right.
And, you know, I was a slave. I was a slave to it. I was a slave to my dope man. I was a slave to the drugs. It's exactly the word that I was used to describe it. I was a slave.
Yeah, it takes over your mind.
Everything. It takes over everything about you. It becomes who you are. It is not you. It wasn't me at all. Anybody who knew me growing up before I started, you know, hanging out with the wrong crowd, you know, I was a good kid. I was a choir boy for the church. You know, I was...
That was right before I got in the choir.
And, you know, the friends that I had at the time would tell you the same thing. You know, I was a good kid. I grew up a good kid. Good family values, you know.
Right.
And all for trying to fit in led me to being the biggest piece of scum in the world.
Well, maybe not the biggest.
Well, maybe not the biggest, but I did some really horrible, grimy things, and I treated people all the way across the board horribly. You know, from the beginning to the end, I treated my girlfriends horrible. I treated my friends poorly. You know, I was selfish, completely self-centered.
Right.
It was always about me, you know. And they'll attest to that too, you know, the friends that I had at the time, you know, and I treated people badly. There was a time, and I know I'm going back a little bit, but something that I think about a lot is I had a girlfriend. This is the role that drugs played in my life. I had a girlfriend in high school who I got pregnant. Now, at the time that she told me, I was drinking. I was already drunk.
Right.
I was already high. And as she's telling me, I'm telling her to, you know, F off, like, get out of my face. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to deal with you. This is your problem. Get out of here.
Right.
You know, let me get back to doing what I'm doing. And that's what that stuff did to me, you know, like, it just, me was the only thing on my priority list. Take that stuff somewhere else. Those are the consequences that I look back at now and actually have an effect on my life.
What happened with the baby?
It was aborted. She got an abortion, which I have mixed feelings on that, and I'm not going to get into it. But you know, that plays that's a heavy weight that I still carry.
Right.
You know, like, that's the damage that I did to this person. You know, and they still loved me, and still wanted to be a part of my life, and I just continued to treat them horribly. Thank God I made amends to this person not too long ago, and it went really well. And we don't talk a lot, but we're on talking terms. And you know, that's only because of what I'm doing now. Like,
Right.
I never would have reached out and tried to make amends to anybody. But back to what was going on when I left. Eventually, I ran out of ways to get high. Ran out of ways to get money. I couldn't steal anymore because there was nothing left to take. I couldn't, you know, I got tired of only getting a little bit here and there for doing these little missions for, you know, my dope man. So, sitting on the side of the road one day, broke, waiting for the dope sick to kick in, frustrated, and I guess the idea that came across my head was, I'm gonna go rob something. You know, that's a quick couple bucks. And so we spent the rest of the day driving around, finding somewhere to rob. I ended up, the first time I robbed something was the Family Dollar, and I've already been convicted on it. So it was the Family Dollar in Bedford at Northfield in Columbus, and I was scared. You know, I already had a high level of anxiety, and I was, you know, starting to get dope sick, and I was scared. But, you know, I went in there and I was using a note that said I had a gun.
Wow.
Give me all your money.
You didn't have one with you, though, did you?
No, I had a look-alike gun, but it wasn't a real gun. And it wasn't something that I was pulling out. I just mainly used the note. But it said I had a gun on it. And, you know, I still remember to this day, and this was 6 years ago almost, you know, I remember the whole interaction. I remember the people standing behind me. I remember the look on the lady's face, the shaking, the fear that I put into these people. You know, I'm pretty sure the people behind me caught on because I was in line. And there was this mom and her 2 kids, you know, standing there behind me. And I remember her kind of like slowly grabbing her kids, you know, to her. You know, the lady at the register shaking, trying to get all the money out of the drawer. And, you know, I got it and I took off.
Wow.
And that's, you know, and I got, you know, a couple $100. It wasn't a lot because it was just from the register. But that was enough for me to say, oh, hey, well, this is really easy, you know? And so I did that just about every day for the next week or so.
Wow. I can't believe you didn't get caught.
Not at first. And the way it happened was, you know, I'd rob something one night and that would get us only through the next day. You know, even no matter how much it was, it only got us through the next day. And I think there was only one day that I actually took off during this spree because I had enough. And so I robbed the Family Dollar. I robbed the same Dollar General twice.
Oh, jeez.
Exactly a week later. I robbed the Mr. Hero. The Mr. Hero, I robbed the girl at the front counter, and again, this is one of those ones that I completely remember because she fainted. She passed out. That time I actually had to flash what, you know, was to them a gun.
Right.
She passed out. But there were also the ones, I robbed another Family Dollar. I tried to rob another Mr. Hero. I got talked out of that one somehow by the guy at the counter. See, and that's the thing too, like, I still had like a good heart, I think, you know.
Somewhere
Somewhere inside, you know,
right.
there was still that subconscious telling me, you know, like, this isn't right, you know, but, you know, the drugs took that over. Like, it wasn't something that came out very often, and somehow he caught me, and he's talking me down, and, you know, he it's funny, this guy, and this goes to show you how people are, and there are people out there that care. This guy, whether he was serious or not, he said, listen, man, you don't have to do this. You know, if it's really that bad, I'll give you a job.
Wow.
You know, this guy offered me a job and I'm trying to rob him. You know, like, and I don't know if he was just trying to call me or he was being serious, but like,
It made you
either
stop
way,
and think.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, wow, like, okay, I'm cool. And I just ran. I took off. And of course, you know, I told my girlfriend something else.
You
something
lied.
happened. He pulled out a gun on me. I had to run away.
You lied.
Of course. Just like everything else. You know, so that went on. I robbed a pizza delivery driver. All I ended up getting out of that was the pizza, which sucked. You know, a couple failed attempts.
Right.
Mainly, you know, I didn't have a gun. I can't imagine what would have happened if I really had a gun. I probably would have shot somebody. I would have shot somebody to ensure that I could get high.
Wow. And then if the police found you and you pulled a gun on them, I mean, that would have been even.
Well, and that's,
you know.
that's a story I can get to here in a second. But so this whole thing scared me.
Right.
Going in these places and robbing them was scary. Like, I had horrible, like, I didn't want to do it. I had to do it. There was a point, we were sitting outside of a place, and my girlfriend, we were talking, I'm like, I don't want to do this. We got to find another way. And, you know, she said something to me, and, you know, I'm not blaming her for feeling this way, because she was in the same place that I was mentally. But she said, if you want to keep sticking that needle in your arm, you got to go in there and do that.
Right.
You know, and that's all it took. You know, I had to do this. You know, there was no options left. There was no thought of getting clean. There was no thought of finding another way. I had to do this.
Right.
This is the only way. I had to keep getting high. And where the future wasn't that, it wasn't of concern to me. I had to be here today, and I had to get high today. And so, that's where it took me. Eventually, at one of the robberies, she ended up getting caught. We ended up getting split up. She got caught and arrested. I got away. It's a crazy story of its own, but I got away. And so I was living at one of my buddies at the time, one of my drug buddies, his place. And of course, 3 of us got together. We were all addicts, so we were trying to find ways to get high, more fake checks, because they had access to checks that, we didn't. They actually took me to a robbery once. That was a failed attempt. The person in there ended up running and pressing the alarm.
Right.
But so as we were leaving his house one time, and this was 3 days after she got arrested. So I made it 3 days after she got arrested. I guess I was standing outside of his house, and somebody drove by and saw me, and they reported it to the police, because I didn't know that my picture was going around.
Right.
I didn't know that, my picture was being sent out to all the surrounding
You
police
didn't even think about
departments.
that.
No, and I guess what happened was they were setting up a task force. They set up a SEAL team to track me down and find me. So my picture's up everywhere. And so they thought I was armed because of the gun note and whatnot. So they didn't come into the house. They waited for me to leave. And we were driving back to my apartment, and they pulled us over. And I remember my buddy got out of the car because he thought it was something about him.
Was he driving?
His dad, he was driving. Yeah.
Right.
And so we didn't think it was for me.
Right.
That wasn't what crossed our minds. So he got out of the car to avoid them seeing me. And, because he knew what was going on. But, so he gets out of the car, and I'm smoking a cigarette. I'm trying not to pay attention. I'm trying not to look. So I keep my head down, I'm smoking a cigarette. Well, all of a sudden, I hear a bunch of commotion. And, I look to my left, and my buddy's down on the ground with a knee in his back, and the cop on top of him's got a gun pointed at me.
Wow.
And I start looking around, and I notice there's anywhere from 10 to 15 cops and detectives, shotguns, assault rifles, pistols, all pointed at me like, get out of the car, hands up, drop the cigarette, or hand me the cigarette through the window.
So what were you thinking when you saw that? Were you like afraid?
I wasn't sure what to think. I guess part of me probably wanted to run. And I guess I was just in shock because I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, I'm just sitting there smoking my cigarette.
Right.
That wasn't, the whole time I'm not thinking about getting caught. That wasn't a consequence that I saw happening. I thought for some reason I was going to get away with it. I'm running into these places without a mask.
Right.
No gloves, no nothing. Robbing them, broad daylight. And getting caught wasn't even a thought that came across my mind. Like,
No.
that's not what I was thinking about. So they got me out of the car, arrested me, took me to the station, and of course I detoxed there. There were 4 cities that I was robbing places in. So over the 3 days that I was there, the detectives were coming in and questioning me. They already had a statement from my girlfriend, and they already had me on video. So it really wasn't a case; it was just a formality for them. And what's crazy is like they were actually really nice to me, most of them. The detective that actually was ahead of my case was actually really nice. He let me go out in the Sally Port and smoke a cigarette. He knew I was sick. I was throwing up.
Right.
I wasn't eating anything.
Right.
And he treated me really good. At the time, I was just so angry. I didn't pay attention to things like that. After the 3rd day, county came and picked me up. So they took me to Cuyahoga County. And I sat there for 3 months. not really fighting my case because there was nothing to fight, just trying to find something decent to plea out to, I guess. My lawyer was working on, because it was a public attorney, it wasn't a paid for, and that matters in the system for whatever reason. They don't work as hard for you. But my lawyer, he did a good job. And in county, again, I was they put me on protocol, which so like you get some medicine to kind of help you through withdrawals. And I was still trying to get high. I was still trying to find dope. I was still trying to hang out with the wrong people, and I ended up falling in with a gang.
Now this was at county?
One time. Yeah, this was in county. And I actually went to the hole, segregation. They call it the hole, because they found pills in my cell. And while I was in the hole is when I got convicted. And when I got convicted, and this almost had my knees buckling, my judge was actually really sympathetic to my addiction.
Right.
Understood that that's why I was committing my crimes.
Right.
But on the other hand, she had a duty. So she's listing off. I ended up getting convicted on 8 felonies. I think 3 or 4 of them were felony 1 aggravated robberies, 2 or 3 of them were F2 robberies, and 1 or 2 of them was felony 3 robberies.
So just putting the threat of the gun on the paper probably was like
Yes.
not a good idea.
Right. Well, and that's what got the aggravated, was the brandishing the weapon.
Right.
And so she's listing off, for this felony, I'm going to sentence you to 6 years, and this one's 6 years, and this one's 6 years, and this one's 6 years, and it's building up on top of each other, and I'm just like struck back. And I think altogether it was like 36 years total.
They added up to, right.
And then she went on to make a point that in any other circumstances, she would run these all consecutive, meaning back to back. It means I would serve 6-year sentence, and then when that 6-year sentence was over, it would carry on to the next year's 6-year sentence until I served 36 years. And whatever it was, she ran them all concurrent. And so I got sentenced to a total of 6 years in state prison. And I was in a hole. I was in segregation when this happened. So I was completely isolated by myself, no phone access, no nothing. My mom and my sister in the back of the courtroom bawling their eyes out. Her family's in there too.
Right.
Just you can hear them crying, and I can't do anything. I get escorted back to my cell. And so, I got shipped off to prison not too long after that. They send you to the transition center, which is Lorain. Didn't really do anything Lorain. I was still trying to get high. Ended up finding some crack at one point. Did that. Got to prison. Used heroin the first month I was there. So like things like the being sentenced wasn't enough, obviously, for me. I was still trying to get high.
Sure.
I was still trying to do the same old thing. And at that point, again, I fell in with this gang. And so I was still getting into trouble. I was, selling tobacco in the prison. I only did heroin the one time, though. But they had, like Suboxone was a big thing there. I was still drinking once in a while, taking people's pills, whatever I could here and there. It wasn't like a necessity anymore, but it was something that I wanted.
Now, were there treatment programs that they tried to get you in when you were in prison?
No. I don't think I even lied on the, they do like this survey or whatever. And no, I didn't get IOP or anything. They offer IOP in the prison system, but I didn't get any treatment. I didn't have any classes that I had to take. Nothing. Just do your time.
Right.
However you do it. And so that's what I did. And I fell in with the wrong crowd again. And did what I did.
So how did you get out of that? How did you get out of that dark place?
Well, eventually, my associations changed. A guy came in, and I still talk to him to this day. And he grew up. He was an older guy, but he grew up a gangbanger. And for some reason, me and him, clicked. We started hanging out, and he started telling me like this isn't the way, man. This isn't what you should be doing in life anymore. So he kind of like helped me separate myself from that. And I started talking to another guy too, which is really funny. I was walking by his rack one time, and I've always been interested in like spirituality. So I'm walking by this guy's rack, and he's reading the Tao Te Ching, and I saw something on the back about this other book by this Lama, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm still like involved in what I was doing, but so I order this book, and I'm reading it, and things start kind of clicking for me. I didn't really realize it, but I started feeling something pulling me in a different direction. And this was about 3 years in, 2.5, 3 years in. For that whole time, I was just messing up. But I did that, and it's funny how things progressed. At one point, I was flagged as a gang member. And I had all these tattoos, and he told me, if I get one more tattoo, there'll be consequences for it. Well,
so you were getting these tattoos in prison?
Yeah.
And like you're not allowed to?
No, you're not allowed to get prison or tattoos. You're not allowed to do drugs. I mean, but we did all of it.
Right.
There wasn't. We were criminals. We did what we wanted, and we found a way to do it.
Right.
And they tried. They tried to stop you, but
I don't understand why they tried to stop you from getting tattoos.
It's uncleanly. They think we're gonna be spreading disease and the blood and
the needles.
Yeah, sharing needles and getting infections, and
You're not doing it the reputable way.
Right. It was a health concern.
Right.
And it was like there weren't people sharing needles a lot, but like it was just dirty.
Yeah, it was.
We were using soot to make our ink and springs to make our needles, and people's blood spraying, and it wasn't clean. As much as you wanted to think it was, but tattoos was my thing for a while. I got a lot of tattoos while I was in there. And so he told me, he's like, don't get another gang tattoo. And I'm like, all right, yeah, cool, whatever. My mind,
Don't tell me not to do something.
Right. Well, and it's like, I just brushed it off. And like 2 or 3 months later, I got another gang tattoo. And not a whole year later, but like later in the year, that was in like March. I think I got the tattoo February or March. And December came up my yearly review for my STG. And they strip you out and they check all your tattoos. And here I have a new tattoo.
Oh, yes.
So he wrote me up for it. I ended up going in front of the board. It's RIB. It's like our reprimand board, like who deals with the bigger tickets. And I got in trouble. And they put me in segregation for 30. I was in segregation for about 35 days. Completely isolated with my bunkie. 35 days for a tattoo.
So you had a person. You were in there with somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one other person. That was the only person that I saw for 35 days. And so I'm back there, and now I actually have time to like think. Because for years I didn't think, I just did.
Right.
I got caught up in life. I got caught up in using in what I wanted and what I thought I wanted, what I needed. And I'm back there, and what this guy was saying to me started setting in, and what I was reading started setting in. Like, man, like this isn't. I don't think this is how I'm supposed to be living my life.
Right.
Getting in trouble, fighting the system, doing drugs, getting high, not having a relationship with my family, not lying to everybody and having to manipulate everything and hurting people, and like so all these things started sitting in, and I started meditating, and I started really just contemplating, just doing a lot of like self-reflection. I found that part of my heart that was suffocated, and started coming back out because I was, sort of clean, clean thinking.
Right.
Starting to be able to focus on things. Of course, back there, I'm still trying to get people's pills and whatnot. And, so I think that was like a major turning point. When I got out of the hole, I got involved with some programming. I was working in the library there. Eventually, I started facilitating for this entrepreneur group. A couple buddies that I knew helped get me in. They wanted me involved in that because something changed about me.
Right.
And
right.
I didn't see it happening, but it was happening, and they saw it too. And they're like, "Wow, that guy's responsible, and whatever." And so I got involved in that, and that was really cool. It was a group for entrepreneurship, helping convicts get out and start their own businesses, teaching them business concepts. And, that was cool. And I still wasn't completely straight at that time. Again, like I said, this was like a really long process for me. It wasn't something like I just woke up one day and I'm like, I never actually at the time even made a conscious decision to stop using. Like for a long time it was still like, oh, well, I can still do mushrooms. I can still drink. I can still smoke pot here and there. And, those thoughts carried on. I was going to get out. I'm not going to use heroin, but I'm just going to sell it, because now I have these connections or, cocaine. Like, that was the thought process. Like, I just won't use.
Right.
Because heroin, that's the bad thing. It's just that drug. As long as I don't use that drug, I'll be okay.
Right.
Completely ignoring all the other problems that I had. And, over time, like, there was a lot going on when I got out of segregation with a buddy of mine. We were getting into it with, he was getting into it with a gang. He wasn't gang affiliated, but he was my dude, so
right.
I was with him. But so there's a lot going on. And at some point, one of my other buddies got some free Suboxone, and he gave me and another of my buddies a piece. And this is like really where it like clicked. And I was nervous to take it because it's been a while since I did that. And so I let my one friend do his first, and he got high. And, I'm looking at him, and he's, like just walking around looking horrible. And I like say to myself, like, is that what I look like?
Right.
Like, is that what I want to do? Is that what I want to look? Is that how I want people to see me? It just, eyes all messed up, like scratching himself, picking at his face, like that's not, and I'm good. I took it back to my buddy.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, I'm cool, man. Like, I'm good. You guys do what you do, but I don't want any. And,
is that the first time you, like, refused?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was, like, like, looking back, that was a huge deal. Like, was something, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, I didn't even see the change. It just, like, happened. And then, of course, like, one day led to another. And, like, I didn't make the conscious decision to stop using. Like I said, I still wanted to drink. I still wanted to smoke weed once in a while when I got out. And, but here's what happened. So I started getting involved in this programming, this entrepreneur group. And one of the other guys in it was also an addict who was in recovery.
Right.
I didn't know. And I started getting clean. And I started getting on the, I started putting some clean time together. One day led into another, and I started feeling great. I started finding these things that I enjoyed,
And you could actually think.
Yeah.
Your head was clear.
Imagine that. And so, time goes by, and I'm getting involved in this program. I end up becoming the administrative assistant, doing a lot of the computer work, and he's in recovery too. But over time, I get on this, they call it this pink cloud. We're just excited about being clean, and we want to help everybody. And, whatever. So we come together. I got, some clean time. And I'm not in recovery at this time. I'm not going to meetings. I'm just clean. I started finding that spirituality. I started practicing a spiritual path. And so, that did wonders to my life. It just really brought me to a really happy, peaceful place. Like, I found something that wasn't drugs that made me feel good.
Right.
So that's kind of like what took over, and I got on that pink cloud, and I'm like, all right, cool, like, this is fun. I'm going to do this. I want to help people. And so we started making a film and on addiction and trying to help people. We were doing interviews and all these things, like, and so, like, that was cool. I got into a fitness program. It was a 10-week fitness class. Was trying to do the film, doing the entrepreneur group, and I was walking the yard one day, and my buddy stopped me, and he's like, "Hey man, there's this thing going on in the chapel. You should come check it out. You know, it's about addictions, recovery." There was a recovery day going on, and it was NA and AA. They put on this event, and so I go in there, and there's this guy talking, and he's loud, and he's like talking about his life story about how he used to get beat up, and because he was an addict, and he was talking about being in the trenches, and then he started talking about how his life changed. And I'm listening to this guy, and I'm like, wow, like this guy's been through it, and look at him now, like he looks great, like he's got some nice clothes on, speaks really well, doing good for himself. And there's all these people in the room, and there was free coffee. I'm pretty sure that's what got me.
Yeah.
Because in prison, you get instant coffee,
Oh.
and that's it, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And so, like, they're going around telling people, like, there's percolated coffee in there. It's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm there.
I'm so there.
And so that's the funny story of how I got in the door. And so I started looking around, and I see all these guys that I know because I'm in prison with them all. And I started seeing like everybody who's doing something with their life, who's got smiles on their face, who are laughing, and they're not high.
Right. Right.
They're clean and they're having a good time. Like, wow, these are the people I want to be around. And so I started talking to them, and I started going to meetings, and Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and I started meeting these people, and I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and it just, things, just like my disease progressed, my addiction got worse and worse.
Right.
Over that extended period of time, the last 2.5 years that I was in there, things got better. I started finding things that I actually enjoyed in life. I started finding yoga. I got into yoga. And that's a funny story how that actually felt. I ended up teaching yoga in prison.
Wow.
The program, because people knew by now that I was getting into like the spirituality, and the guy who was teaching the yoga class at the time didn't want to.
Right.
So he's kind of like, "Hey man, I know you're into this kind of stuff. You want to take this class over for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
And you must have been doing it right at that point.
Yeah,
the yoga,
I was doing something. And I was studying a lot. I remember studying a lot to do that. Was learning all sorts of new stuff, and it was great. I ended up teaching yoga for like 2 years. And at some point during that, I ended up getting on the board of that fitness program that I took. Mm-hmm. I ended up being the secretary for that, helping out, facilitating once in a while. I used to love like going out in the cardio floor and running like a cardio class once a week or something. That was fun. And eventually we adopted a yoga class. We ended up starting a Healthy Heart Fitness yoga class. While the other one was going on, I was president of that program while I had a buddy teaching it, and then I was also teaching the yoga class in the fitness part of it. And so that was awesome. I was able to help people. And that's like something that while using, like I told you I never considered anybody else's feelings, and now I'm actually like
Right.
I'm working with other addicts, and we got this spiritual discussion group set up. We're meeting in the chapel once or twice a week and talking yoga, and we're doing yoga, and we're working out, and we're all hanging out, and we're all having a good time, and we built a family within this community, within the fellowship. There was a group of us that just, we started doing everything together. We talked all the time, and each of us had the traits about us that we encouraged the others, and we grew together. And it was such a wonderful experience to do in there, because like we're in prison, we're doing yoga in prison first of all.
Right.
A bunch of grown thugs doing yoga, and I laugh about it all the time because I had some guys coming into the class that were just like, yeah man, like just gangsters.
Right.
And like, yeah, man, this yoga stuff really works. And it was just great to it put smiles on people's faces. And, they got their work in too, because it was a fitness class. But
Sure.
people went out of there feeling so good. And, that's kind of like another one of those moments that like kind of hit home with me. Like, this is what I want to do in life. This is what I was meant. This is what I went through all of this for.
Finally.
You know, I went through all those years of just horrible, pathetic, living,
Right.
angry and depressed and just feeling like I didn't deserve to live and whatnot, and I had no purpose, and now I'm finding this new way of life.
So when did you find out that you were going to get out?
That's a funny story too. I knew that I was getting it out. May 31st was my out date, and I remember.
Because this was less than 6 years.
Yeah, well, I ended up serving 5.5 years in prison on the 6-year term, and judicial was coming up. I filed for my judicial, but that got denied. But transitional control was also coming up. They do transitional control about 6 months before you leave. They send you to a halfway house. And I kept telling my caseworker, like, I don't want it. I'm cool. I like where I'm at. I'm doing good things.
Right.
I'm not ready to go yet, which, is crazy, believe it or not. But
Right.
I was at that point, just let me finish my time. Let me do what I had to do. And I remember I went into my caseworker's office and I'm like, I haven't heard about this in a while. What's going on? And she's like, oh, about your TC? Your date's in 2 weeks. I said, oh, so they already approved it. And she's like, yeah, you're leaving in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I'm like, now mind you, I'm the secretary for a program. I'm heading up a class. I'm doing all these things.
Right.
And here I am, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. So like the last 2 weeks was funny, just running around trying to get everything figured out.
You had to put in your 2 weeks
training,
notice.
Yeah, training new guys to take over for the positions and figure out, get everybody's information so I can keep in contact and hang out with everybody for a couple last times. And so I found out, and part of me was like, I really don't want to go, but whatever, I had to accept it.
But you probably were a little afraid, like, oh, what it's going to be like once I get out.
Well, it was new. I just served 5.5 years. Like
Sure.
I was comfortable. I was
Right.
in a mode, and so yeah, it was really scary. And of course, I always heard bad things about halfway houses, and I get there and it's not that bad. The first month sucked because I wasn't able to go do anything, because at this point I was in a routine of going to 2 meetings a week
Sure.
and hanging out with addicts, recovering addicts all the time.
Right.
And here I am, I'm not allowed to leave anywhere for a month. Nobody in here is doing anything positive. It was just a horrible
Right.
experience for a second, but it was a trial for me that I made it through. I didn't use, I didn't stop doing what I was doing. I was still reading, daily. I was still, trying to meditate.
Where was that facility?
In Akron, Oriana House, Team RC. So I made the best of it, and and this is like really funny. Like I did what I had to do. I followed the rules.
Sure.
Because that's the point that I was at in my life, and I'm progressing through the program.
Following rules. Who would've
Yeah, and so I'm looking around and all these guys are messing around doing what they're not supposed to do, and then angry at the people
Sure.
because they're not progressing. And it's just like wow, that's how I was.
You can see them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
new
know, like,
eyes.
that's how I was. Like wow, like fighting the system, it just doesn't get you anywhere. Not to say there's not a time and place for everything, but there's a proper way to go about it, and they just weren't doing it. So it was like comical, like these
Right.
guys are just doing. So like they just expected things to go their way,
Right.
and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I don't live that way anymore. So it's really cool. I phased up. I was able to start going to meetings. I got a job while I was in there. Eventually, I was able to take home passes, come home for 24 hours. Haven't been home in 6 years.
Right, right.
So things just progressed along. I got a primary counselor. They put me in IOP. Primary counselor loved me because I was actually doing something positive. So he fast tracked me through the program because he felt that I was doing what I needed to. So I actually just finished my last Africa class last week, which is a great thing. No more classes. I have to check in once a week still. I'm on house arrest. Still got the ankle monitor on.
Right.
But I'm at home. And I.
You had a birthday party here at home.
I had a birthday party in my house. I haven't had a birthday party. The last birthday I was out, I spent miserable because I was out of the house. At that time it was March, 3 months before I got locked up. So obviously I was still, desperate.
Right.
I was able to buy one drink at the bar because I was so broke, and that was only because I got a gift card. Just miserable. That was the last birthday that I spent out there, and it wasn't any better the year before that or the year before that.
So now you have a job?
So I have 2 jobs.
2 jobs.
And I don't really care for the one, but I'm employable.
Right.
I'm able to work. I have a great relationship with my family. I got a new girlfriend for the last couple months. That relationship's been amazing. So all these things have come together. Like my life
Right.
is done nothing but get better. And not everything's great. I still struggle.
Life isn't perfect.
Well, being out is scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like after
Yeah.
all that time and going through the things that I went through there, like being out here is scary. And I'm not able to leave the house yet.
Right.
So I can't imagine, actually being able to like drive wherever I want, whenever I want. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that
just, like, kinda,
independence
like,
is gonna come.
yeah, and it's nerve wracking. But I will say this: not everything is great. Not everything goes the way I want it to. But today, like, I have a lot of things to be grateful for. This whole process has given me a lot of things to be grateful for. A lot of good friends, a lot of good people in my life now, my family. And so, I've come to the point where, like, I'll have 3 years clean on May 15th. I have 3 years that I know for sure
Right.
that I haven't used. And, with that time and with the spiritual practice and with the self-awareness, I don't have to use. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how anxious or scared I get, I don't have to use. And I have people who care about me today that, I can call any time of the day, any time of the night. If I'm struggling, I can call them and they'll be there for me. And, so I have these great relationships with people and I have purpose. I found purpose in my life. Things that make me feel good. I'm playing guitar again.
Oh,
I
that's
used to be
great.
a musician. I gave up. I had a dream of being a musician. That's what I wanted to do in life.
At one point, right?
And I gave it up.
Because you had to give everything
I
away.
gave everything up.
Everything.
That was one of the last things to go was my drum set. And I sold it.
Oh, and you had told me you were taking online courses.
Yes, I am taking a course right now to get certified as a personal trainer. That whole fitness
You'll
thing
be able
really
to
kicked
help
off.
You'll be
Yes.
helping people.
I actually have a buddy who is a personal trainer and he works with a lot of recovering addicts. And it's great. Exercise is probably one of the greatest things that I've found as a recovering addict.
Right.
Fitness, alongside with the spiritual side of things, and I'm not talking religious.
Right.
I'm talking about God. I'm talking about just that finding yourself. Finding what's within, and between that and the fitness, like everything, it just works so great.
Well, so your new high is
in my
helping
life.
people.
That too, yeah, and
Right.
and that's kind of where I'm going
Natural
with that.
high.
Like, yeah, and it feels great. Like when I'm able to put a smile on somebody else's face, or when I'm able to help them reach a goal, it's one of the greatest feelings I've ever experienced in my life.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video is, even if we help one person that's in a dark place, know that there's hope
Yes.
and a way to get out.
And that's what I found. I've found so many other people who have been through what I've been through, and some who have been through worse.
Right.
I was with a guy in prison who was serving 30 years for killing somebody drunk driving. And
That could happen.
it could, and that's where the prison experience kind of is really cool, and I'm glad it happened. It sucks, but
Right.
it's what I needed in life.
Right.
And I met these guys who were good people. Good people came up in good families. Not everybody that I was in prison with was from the hood or lived in a ghetto life. Like
Right.
a lot of these people had families who cared about them, and got A's in high school and made it to college and whatever, and now they're serving 5, 10, 15 years in prison, 30 years in prison because they wanted something different. Because
Yeah, it must be really difficult. Like you had, you got arrested, and that kind of like got you on the right path. But if you hadn't got arrested, it's like, how else would you see yourself getting out of it? There's no other way.
I would have died.
There's not many options.
There was no other idea in my mind that I would have survived if I didn't get taken off the streets. I would have died.
It's amazing you lasted as long as you did.
Yeah.
I mean, because you were, doing things for so long.
And I was
So-
putting myself in places that were dangerous,
Right.
around dangerous people all the time.
Now you can say, been there, done that.
Yeah. And
Don't want to do it again.
no, I'm good on that. But there is another way. And it might be cool for a couple years, and you can keep thinking that, but there is no positive outcome to drinking. You're in high school. You parties. That's the thing. But you gotta be careful, because like with me, like I said, and with all the other addicts that I know, it wasn't using to have fun. It was using to feel different. And if you're using to feel different, there's a problem.
Right.
With how you're living, or with what's going on in your head, what's going on with your feelings. There's something wrong. And, it doesn't have to be like that.
No.
There is another way, not to numb it, but to address it and to fix it. You don't have to keep running from it. You don't have to keep hiding from everything. You don't have to ignore it.
You don't have to lie through your life.
Yeah.
Isn't it nice now not having to worry about all that?
It's
a big weight?
A huge weight. It's
lifted off, right?
I don't have to lie anymore. And that's great. And you know what? If people don't like what I have to say, that's cool too, because I'm able to still communicate in a different way.
Right, right.
I don't have to worry about, I'd rather hurt you from saying the truth than lying to you for 10 years and you finding out.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lie that I held on to for years that, I thought I was doing the other person a favor. And it probably would have helped them get to a better place sooner if I would have just told the truth. And, lying's not the way. That's not cool. Like, having to keep track of all your lies and, how you're going to manipulate somebody. And that's the other thing, like, having to figure out what you're going to do day to day just to survive. Like, that wears on you real fast.
I'll bet.
And so, I don't know, there's just all those other addicts that I was talking about, the guy with 30 years, he's clean. The guy who I talked to that's still in prison doing 7 years, he's clean.
Right.
He just celebrated 4 years clean. And they're all happy. They're all doing these great things. They're helping each other, and they have purpose, and they have these goals and dreams that now they can see come to fruition.
Do you have some goals?
I have some goals. My biggest goal, of course, is to stay clean. And with that comes everything else, like this whole fitness thing. I want to get my certification.
Sure.
And it doesn't stop there. Fitness is become a passion for me. Like we were discussing, that there is hope. There is another way of life. Reach out to somebody. Ask for help. I know it sucks. Nobody wants to ask for help. I can do things on my own. I can control life on my own. But there is always somebody out there who has some kind of experience with what you're dealing with what you're going through, with what you might deal with. And there's always somebody out there who's willing to help you, that I've found. And, that's through experience that I've found that, with being around people who actually care, with people who have made it from the bottom and now are succeeding in ways that they've never imagined before. It doesn't have to be this horrible event life. Life doesn't have to be this disgusting, horrible place. It doesn't have to be miserable and chaotic. And if that's what you want, that's what you want. I can't tell you any different. For me, I know there's something better out there. I've seen it and I want it. So I'm going to pursue that. And hopefully I don't ever use again, because if I go back out, I'm dead. It's over with. There's no other options. Prison, death, that's exactly what I'd be heading back for. And of course it all started with me just smoking pot with a couple of my buddies and trying to feel different. So I keep saying it, and I keep saying it. There is a better way. Life is beautiful. And I never saw that beauty before. And now every day I have something to be grateful for. And as long as I stay grateful, I'll never use again. And I'll continue being happy, even when things go wrong, because I can accept life now. I can play life's game, life on life's terms. And that's great. That's cool. And it's freeing. I've been liberated from such a destructive thing, and it's just, I can be grateful for seeing the sun out today. I can be grateful for having just a conversation with a random person in a random place, and being able to be empathetic and being able to feel, and feeling scary sometimes. But it's probably one of the greatest gifts being clean has given me, is being able to figure life out now. I can figure life out, and I can navigate it, and it's wonderful, and I couldn't be happier to be where I'm at today, and I'm on house arrest. And I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm grateful for being able to do stuff like this. It's wonderful. If you just let it happen and work for it, it's bound to happen. Put that work in.